Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start with this topic, fascism, and the book is Political Ideology by Andrew Haywood. So the term fascism, it derives from the Latin word fasces, meaning a bundle of rods with an axe blade protruding that signifies the authority of magistrate in imperial Rome. So this is the literal definition, but when it comes to the political or the ideological spectrum, it refers to revolutionary socialist, or you can say revolutionary national socialist. And it was not until Mussolini that the term acquired an ideological meaning. So Mussolini, it employed the term to describe the paramilitary armed squad he formed during and after First World War. That fascismo, it acquired a clear ideological meaning. So in short, the literal meaning has been different, but it can also be equated with certain relegated power, because in the literal meaning itself, the power in the hands of magistrate were all pervasive, but it's gleaned with revolution and socialism and nationalism as well. So this revolutionary national socialism, which uh, which can be clumped as fascism, it clearly got a different pedestal, different platform during the reign of Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Then the defining theme of fascism is the idea of an organically unified national community, national and community both. So it's you can say a paradigm of national socialism, which embodied in a belief in strength through unity. The individual, in a literal sense, is nothing. Individual identity must be entirely absorbed into the community or a social group. The fascist ideal is that a new man is a hero motivated by duty, honor, and self sacrifice, prepared to dedicate his life to the glory of nation or race, and to give unquestioning obedience to a supreme leader. So, here in this paragraph, some basic features of fascism has been given, and you should keep in mind the three root words: revolt, nationalism, and socialism. So, fascism, first, it is about a national identity. Then, the preservation or the protection of national identity, it harks on a revolt, a revolution. And then there is a solidarity among people, solidarity on the protection and propagation of a particular community. It can be a racial community, an ethnic community, a national community, a geographical community, and this propagation, this protection, this communal belief can be it manifests in socialism. So these three are the ideological platform upon which fascism roots itself. But then its its a manifestation, its a presentation, it is different. So this revolt I mentioned, it needs a reverence and a blind reverence, an unquestionable reverence to a supreme leader. So first, it has an element of obedience. Then, when I say socialism, it means they there is no separate identity such as individual. There is no individual here, and there is no place for individual in fascism. The only individual which should be recognized and which has a face is the leader, is the supreme leader. And other than that, it is the nationalism, it is the socialism, it is the communal belief, it is the protection of particular ethnic or racial group. So all in all, it is the group identity, and that group identity is represented by a supreme leader. And in many ways, Fascism, it constitutes a revolt against the idea and values that dominated Western political thought from French Revolution onwards. And in the words of Italian fascist, 1789, the year of French Revolution, is dead. So according to them, the various ideas that were derived and borrowed from the French Revolution and that form the, you can say, the many branches of Western political thought, all of those values, all of those value clubs, they are dead. They are no longer valuable. And those values, such as rationalism, progress, freedom, equality, liberalism, fraternity, all of them mean nothing, and they need to be replaced by many other values such as struggle, leadership, power, heroism, war. So when you look at this, it seems that fascism has a strong anti-character, anti-rational, anti-liberal, anti-conservative, anti-capitalist, anti-bourgeois, and anti-communist, and so on. It's uh, when you proceed further in the chapter, you will realize that fascism is not an ideology per se. It does not stand the scrutiny. There are many elements, there are many phases where it becomes so fluid that you cannot recognize uh, or you cannot channelize the thoughts into coherent action. Then, even if you become able to channelize those fluids rhetoric, they will appear certain actions which will be quite contradictory to what has been espoused. So such failure, such mockery, and such rhetorics are rampant in this particular ideology of fascism. Ultimately, it can be brought down that a certain individual, because of his idea and because of the simmering tension of that time, fascism, in short, can be appeared as, it can be expressed as, because of the nexus between wrong time, tough time, and the presence of a charismatic leader. Both of them, when clubbed together, they lead to you can say a totalitarian and a reverential kind of state. Then the next paragraph. Fascism has nevertheless been a complex historical phenomena that encompasses two distinct traditions. Italian fascism, which was essentially an extreme form of statism that was based on absolute loyalty towards a totalitarian state. Whereas, in contrast, German fascism or Nazism, it was founded on racial theories which portrays the Aryan people as the master race and advanced a virulent form of anti-Semitism. And both of these traditions, even if they had a close day by the end of Second World War, it appears that they have re-emerged since 1945 in form of Neo-Fascism and Neo-Nazism. And even in the second decade of 21st century, that is from 2011 to 2020, in many parts of the world, there have been many fractions that could be identified with the far right of political spectrum. And in such countries, you can place France, modern day France. You can place India as well, and the recently Turkey, and so there are many countries, Brazil, Venezuela, that have appeared on. They have shifted their alliance to the far right of the political spectrum, and all of them they could be clubbed as neo-fascist or neo-Nazis. Then let's take a historical overview of fascism. So fascism, it's emerged very much as a revolt against modernity, against the ideas and value of enlightenment. So all those ideas, rationalism, progress, order, political stability, liberalism, fraternity, equality, most of the ideas of French Revolution, they were hawked and revolted by the appearance or the emergence of fascism. So the Nazis in Germany, for instance, proclaimed that 1789, the year of French Revolution, is abolished. In fascist Italy, slogans such as believe, obey, fight, and order, authority, justice, they replaced the more familiar principles of French Revolution, such as liberty, equality, and fraternity. So it appeared that during those tough times, um, now fascism it appeared to attack all those liberal principles upon which the modern day democracies, modern day industrialized society built themselves, and somehow it it can be equated with the instances such as the First World War and the damage it has caused, then the 1929 year of Great Depression, and other than that, industrialization, emergence of big businesses, the spread of capitalism. So all such forces, including immigration, when they came together, and many of the new changes were reviled by the local population, hated by local population, and those hatred, those instances of abhorrence, it was you can say captured by those fascist leaders, and that's how fascism, as an ideological spectrum, it appeared on the horizon. Then, although the major ideas and doctrine of fascism can be traced back to the 19th century, they were fused together and shaped by First World War and aftermath. So, in particular, a potent mixture of war and revolution. Fascism, it appears most dramatically in first instances and in most violent form in Italy and Germany. So in Italy, a fascist party was formed in 1919 under its leader Benito Mussolini, who was appointed prime minister in 1922. Then, by 1926, a one-party fascist state has been established in Italy. Then, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, also known as the Nazis, they were also formed in 1919, and then its leader Adolf Hitler, he was appointed German Chancellor in 1933. You can see both of the equations, both of the arisal, they were a result of First World War. Then regimes that bear some relationship to fascism has also developed outside Europe, notably in 1930s in Imperial Japan and in Argentina under Juan Domingo Perón. So 1930s were also the time of the the Great Depression. So the times were not good, and those times led to the expression of different a violent political streak of people. Then, starting with the occupation of Rhineland in 1936, Nazi Germany, pursued a policy of relentless military expansion, which further ultimately culminated in the First World War, the Second World War. And here, this world war was fought by Germany together with fascist Italy and Imperial Japan as a member of Axis opposing the Allies. Then the defeat of Axis power in 1945 largely discredited fascism as an ideological project. Nevertheless, fascist-like movement have since emerged. They could be clubbed as neo-fascist, radical right, far right, extreme right, and most of them they continue to endorse this militant streak, which first appeared after the First World War. Then let's go ahead. So these neo-fascism and there's a difference between the neo-fascist and the classical fascist in a number of ways. which include the tendency of neo-fascists to scapegoat non-European immigrants, in particular to communists. So the first difference between the neo-fascist and the classical fascist is their scapegoats or their target group. The classical fascists, they used to target communists, liberal and Jews, whereas neo-fascists, they attack the immigrants. Then the second difference between both of them is reduced emphasis on expansionism and war, whereas classical fascism, as you will know further in the chapter, both Hitler and Mussolini, they were a different band of mind, expansionist band of mind, which became visible in their foreign policy when they started expanding, they started resorting to war. And this emphasis it has been reduced to up to a certain limit in neo-fascist. Then the accommodation it has reached with democracy. So earlier the classical fascists, they did not accommodate any form of alternate uh, political group or alternate political authority. Whereas the neo-fascists, they have accommodated themselves with democracy. And they are example of many neo-fascists, including Italian social movement, which superseded in 1995 by self-styled post-fascist National Alliance, the French National Front, then the Liberal Democratic Party in Russia, led by Vladimir Zhirinovsky, and the Greece Golden Dawn. So these are example of new neo-fascist. Now let's have a look at the core themes of fascism. So fascism, as I have said, it's a difficult ideology to analyze, and the reasons are two. The first one is there is doubt regarding if it can be considered in a meaningful sense as an ideology, because it lacks a rational and coherent core, and they are rhetorics, they are contradictions, they are hodgepodge of ideas. So here, a definition has been provided, or you can say a maxim has been provided by Hugh Trevor Roper, who says that fascism is an assorted hodgepodge of ideas. Hitler, for instance, preferred to describe his idea as Weltanschauung rather than a systematic ideology. Weltanschauung, it means a worldview. In other terms, it means a general, incoherent idea, a worldview in a literal sense. But here it paints a general idea, and it has also been provided by or highlighted by a fascist leader himself. So in this sense, a worldview is complete, almost religious set of attitudes that demand commitment and faith rather than innate reason of analysis and debate. So here it is another characteristic of fascist leader that they do not accept reason and rationality. Most of them, they hate questions, they hate rational analysis of anything. Most of their ideas, they are based on faith and reverence. So even if it is their idea, ultimately it does not give any particular line or particular streak to analyze or to, you can say, to make sense of this ideology. Then fascism may thus be better described as a political movement or even a political religion rather than an ideology. So this one is the first core characteristic. The second characteristic is to identify its core principle or the minimum fascist principle. So some questions can be asked here. Where does fascist begin and where does it end? Which movements and regime can be classified as genuinely fascist? And there have been attempts to define the ideological core of fascism. So first is an attempt by Ernest Nolte in his 1965 theory that it is a resistance to transcendence. Then A.J. Gregor, his belief that it looks to construct the total charismatic community. Then Roger Griffin, he asserted that it constitutes a palingenetic ultranationalism. Palingenesis means rebirth, so it's you can say revival ultranationalism or rebirth ultranationalism. Whereas Roger Atwell, he asserted that it is a holistic national radical third way. So all in all, from the definitions or from the maxims itself, you have been able to understand that there are no core principle of this ideology. So it is difficult to accept that any single sentence formula can sum up the whole ideology, but there are some core, some basic minimum ideas, characteristics are there, such as the anti-rationalism, struggle, leadership and elitism, socialism and ultranationalism. And let's look at each of them one by one. The first one is anti-rationalism. So, although fascist political movements were born out of upheaval that accompanied the Fourth World War. So, those upheavals, most of them were related to centered around the First World War, which includes industrialization, imperialism, conflict between various European power for resources, conflict for colonies, emergence of a middle class, the burdening of small croppers, small shopkeepers. So all such changes, all such technical changes, they were accompanied during the First World War. But the fascists, they did not just borrow it from the First World War. They also drew on ideas and theory that has been circulating since the late 19th century. So what were those ideas and theories? The most significant were those ideas were anti-rationalism and the growth of counter-enlightenment thinking. So the Enlightenment movement, which was based on universal reason, natural goodness, inevitable progress, it was committed to liberate humankind from darkness of irrationalism and superstition. However, in the late 19th century, there were many thinkers that started to highlight the limit of human reasons and drew inspiration to others, such as drives and impulses, faith and reasons. So it was like the Enlightenment period, the period of the 15th century, when it was first espoused to take over the dark age of dark medieval ages of the rule of church, or or to rule against, to strike against the growing authority of church during the medieval ages and growing irrationalism, superstition in people. That ideology, it continued up to 404 centuries, but later there were some loopholes, and those loopholes, because yes, one thing is there is a limit to human ingenuity, limit to human knowledge, and limit to what we can see, what we can create, and what we can manifest, what we can represent. So there are limitations in all sphere of life, but those limitations, if they are in right hand, if they are, you can say, if they are tested on rational lines, then we can find, at least we can find a reasonable answer. But the same loopholes, the same absence of all pervasive power, the absence of all knowing knowledge, those loopholes, if exploited by negative powers, they will ultimately end up in propagating such the same idea which was fought by enlightenment. So those ideas of dark age, such as superstition, irrationalism, faith, religious fervor, the idea of all omnipotent, all powerful God, and various such associated doctrines such as racial superiority, class hierarchy, all such associated doctrines, they also get along when such loopholes are exploited. For instance, Friedrich Nietzsche, he proposed that human beings are motivated by powerful emotions, their will rather than rational mind, in particular, but by what he called will to power. So again, as I said, there were some certain loopholes in the ideas that were espoused by the Enlightenment. It generally treated a liberal line, a liberal and progressive line, but still, even if we are in this particular age in 21st century and the third decade, we are almost nowhere on the horizon of universal knowledge, because there isn't a universal knowledge. Universe is as big as you can guess it, and even the modern day astronomy, it believes the universe is so big that you you do not know what is outside it. All in all, universe is 13.8 billion years old in all directions, and we don't know if there are many other universes. We don't know if there are many other dimensions. So this limit, uh, it was not catered to. Catered to in the sense that the enlightened movement, it should have taken this particular factor into account, because the same limit, when highlighted by negative elements, they will say that uh, yes, there stands another element, faith, and the same faith, if it treats a negative line, a negative course, it will lead to superstition. And superstition can take forms such as reverence, obedience, you can say insecurity, violence, and all such different rigors. So back to the topic, Friedrich Nietzsche, one of those people who talk about the limit of human ingenuity or limit of human knowledge in another way, and that is he highlighted there that the rationality, it has also certain limit, and that limit can be superimposed by will to power. And in his work Reflections on Violence, the French syndicalist Georges Sorel, he highlighted the importance of political myths, and especially the myth of general strike, which are not passive descriptions of political reality but expressions of will. Then Henri Bergson, a French philosopher, he advanced the theory of vitalism, which suggests that the purpose of human existence is to give expression to life force rather than to allow it to be confined and corrupt by tyranny of cold reason and soulless calculation. So here again, in both the in three such examples, Nietzsche, Sorel, and Bergson, all the three examples are the representation, you can say, uh, manifestation of the limitations of human knowledge. So if human knowledge is limited, then the question comes, who has the knowledge? Then, in the absence of such answer, there are multiple interpretations of, against, and for the presence of such limits. And those limits, when interpreted in various ways, so here Nietzsche, he interpreted that it should be the will to power. And same, his reflections of violence, Sorel, he talked about the myth of general strike. Then Bergson, he talks about vitalism. So such interpretations were various, and they took various forms. Then proceeding ahead, although anti-nationalism does not have a right-wing or proto-fascist character, fascism gave political expression to most radical and extreme form of counter-enlightenment thinking. So here, the limit of human knowledge, when interpreted that there isn't any need for reason, there isn't any need for rationality, Such behavior or such radical thinking will be espoused, will be controlled and catered by a dominant force, which is fascism. So this anti-rationalism, it has influenced fascism in a number of ways. The first one is it gave fascism a marked anti-intellectualism, which it reflected in its abhorrence, its hatred towards abstract thinking. For example, Mussolini's favorite slogan, action not talk, and inactivity is death. So intellectual life was devalued, and it is believed that fascism it addresses the soul, the emotion, the instinct, rather than the highest seat of power, the brain, the knowledge. And this rigor it exerts a mythical appeal because when you trade a different course which is not paved on rational lines, then anything becomes a myth and anything becomes a possibility, and everything that is not rational, it becomes an emotion, and those emotions are like waves which could be exploited by such target elements. So so when I say such waves are exploited, uh, and those exploitation can also take the form of political mobilization, which were duly and consciously exploited by both Hitler and Mussolini. So they were essentially propagandists which and interested in ideas and theory largely because of their power to elicit an emotional response and they spur the masses to action. Yes, here the meaning of political mobilization is clearly highlighted, that via propaganda, such loopholes, such gaps in people's rational mind, people's knowledge, they could be went out in a different way and people can be harked to action. Then the second, the rejection of enlightenment gave fascism a predominantly negative or destructive character because enlightenment, even if it had its own limits, its own loopholes, it talked about progress along the liberal lines. So any rejection of it is bound to walk on those negative ways. Then fascism also appeared to be anti-philosophy, anti-rational, anti-liberal, anti-conservative, जो हमने पहले भी देखा था. Some have also portrayed fascism as an example of nihilism. Nihilism is a belief that there is nothing worthwhile in the existence, and Nazism, it has been particular described as a revolution of nihilism. However, fascism is not merely a negation of established beliefs and principles. So you can see many contradictions and you know the absence of coherence here. And this coherence will be a key characteristic of this ideology because ideas here are just like um, a crumbs of bread. They are spread here and there. The coherence is glaringly absent here. So again, fascism is not merely negation of established belief and principle. Rather, it is an attempt to reverse the heritage of enlightenment. It represents the darker underside of the Western political tradition. For example, in fascism, freedom came to mean unquestioning submission, and democracy was equated with absolute dictatorship, and progress it implied constant struggle and war. So here you can see the various words, various notations. They have been given different meanings so that they could be turned upside down. Then fascism saw itself as a creative force, a means of constructing a new civilization through creative destruction. Then the third element, by abandoning the standards of universal reason, fascism has placed its faith entirely in history, culture, and idea of organic community. And such a community is shaped not by calculation and interest, which means such a community is not based on rational mind, but innate loyalties and emotional bonds that were forged by a common past. So they are here harking back to a cultural heritage by which the people of that group they belong, and their relationship could be traced. The emotional bond that they have present in the present time, those emotional bonds they have been formed in ancient times. Then in fascism, this idea of organic unity, this communal unity, is taken to its extreme. The national community, or what the Nazi called it, the Volksgemeinschaft, was viewed as an indivisible whole. All rivalries and conflict, they were subordinated to a higher and collective purpose, which means there were no individual identity, no individual existence, only an organic whole, only the collective interest and collective purposes. The strength of nation or race is therefore a reflection of moral and cultural unity. So all in all, this paragraph means all they talked about the organic whole and the relations of this organic whole, they were emotional in nature, and these emotions, they were the ancient cultural heritage which held them together. And the fascist leader, they try to exploit these emotions for their own gain, by which they call that the individual psyche or the individual emotions, individual needs, individual rivalry and conflict, they need to be subordinated to a collective purpose. And let's talk about second element, struggle. So the ideas of Charles Darwin, especially the theory of natural selection, they had a profound impact on the people of that time, especially the social and political lines. And such influence, it was demonstrated through the influence of Herbert Spencer, an advocate of extreme liberal individualism and the earliest exponent of social Darwinism. So here, the let's give you a brief about these principles. So natural selection is the principle by which nature it tries to weed out the deleterious or unwanted genes. And selection here itself means that nature tried to select those mm, who are those genes which are beneficial for survival of individual and species. So this is a natural phenomena, and it takes place over a very long scale or very long time scale, and it usually does not have any impact on, you can say, on individual level. Most of the ideas, most of the impacts of natural selection, it is experienced on species level or population level, and that too is reflected in a long time on longer scales. But such ideas can be given a different shape. So let's elaborate this negative streak. Here, it is uh, it is a biological principle, a genetical principle that when a species propagate via reproduction, which means by birth of children, so the genes of parents, mother and father, they are copied in the offspring, and this is why this is the way by which evolution works. Evolution is simply the inheritance of better traits. But here there is a limitation. The better traits or better genes, they also have a limited pool. एक offspring जो है वो he can inherit only those genes which are already present in the gene pool of his or her parents. सो ये एक फर्स्ट लिमिटेशन तो यहाँ पे है. And about the beneficial, the term that has been highlighted and the biological principle that actually works. So this beneficial is about that when an offspring inherit one copy from each from his mother and father, so this will usually result in two copies of everything. So the offspring, they should have everything in binary form or in multiple of two. So let's say any offspring, if he or she has inherited a gene for hand from his mother and a gene for hand from his father, so in this way, the, this individual should have four hands. This offspring should have four hands because right now, with one gene, his mother possesses two hands, and with one gene, his father possesses two. All in all, if both the copies are being inherited, then the individual offspring should be born with four hands. But this is not the case. We are the exact copies, but the physical features, they can vary. But other than that, the biological mechanism of the offspring via reproduction, it is the same. Homo sapiens are going to give birth to Homo sapiens. Horses are going to give birth to horses. And the genetic elements of chimpanzees will be inherited by their chimpanzee offspring. So this is the key mechanism. So biologically, copies will be biologically, they will be exact replica of all mechanisms, all DNA, all cellular and the genetic processes. The physical features can vary, but here the issue between what has been espoused and what goes replicated in real world is this difference. When a child inherits both the copies from mother and father, then this should be the case. If two hands are inherited from mother, two hands from father, then child should have four hands, but this is not the case. Why? Because here natural selection comes into action. Natural selection, it it will have the offspring with two hands, and now the best features of both the parents, it will be assorted, and those features will be inherited. So here the beneficial traits are about inheriting the best traits that is present in your parents, in your grandparents, in your family lineages. So this is the beneficial element. But if the same element can be, if the same element with a limit of, you can say, with a blend of superstition and the loophole of enlightenment, when all of them come together, it leads to a new radical theory known as social Darwinism. So here you can see that this natural selection, it is not about the survival that has been exploited by the fascist leaders. It is about the inheritance of character traits. And the even if there is a natural selection dimension, it works on a very long time scale, even hundred and thousands of years. So we, on individual scale, we do not need to worry, and we do not need to, you can say, oh, keep tearing the same hole, because it is not going to work. Anyway, thus, an, uh, a new biologist, Herbert Spencer, with his extreme liberal individualism and his belief in social Darwinism, this theory, it infused a different cocktail of politics and genetics. So this notion that human existence is based on biologically impelled competition or struggle, it was popularly attractive in the period of intensifying international rivalry that led to war in 1940. So you can see how the cocktail of biology and politics have gone sour, have gone bad. How is that? Natural selection, it talks about competition, struggle between individuals, struggle between species. But as I've said, this struggle, it is not the struggle that is visible, or the struggle that uh, is present on the geopolitical level. So this struggle first, it is the same struggle. Like if you want to grow up, you need to fight off bacteria, you need to fight off microorganism, and this is an innate process. Your cells do that. You do not taking a miniaturized form and inserting yourself inside your cells to fight off all the outside, the external predators. This is not the way. In the same way, if you are suffering from some disease, it is the antibiotic, it is the medication that works. So all in all, this struggle for competition, this struggle for survival, this competition for resources, all of those ideas, they were given a different tone and they were understood in different light. And because of the, as I've said, the nexus between the tough times, the bad condition, and then the arisal of fascism, all such principles were exploited, or they took a different form of a cocktail, a lethal cocktail. Then social Darwinism, it also had a considerable impact on emerging fascism. Those impact, in the first place, fascists, they regarded the struggle as the natural and inevitable condition for both social and international life. And now, when I have explained the basic principles of natural selection, it's this is an activity which is innate. There is a struggle all the time. There is a struggle for resources, but this struggle is not the struggle, not the violence and war or competition that is often harked back or often highlighted by these negative interpretations. This struggle is innate. This is prevalent. This is present in at all times. Like when I'm speaking, my body, it holds trillions of microorganisms, and many of the microorganisms, they keep evolving, they keep repeating and replicating inside me, and the same thing happens outside. Wherever you go, the air you breathe in, the air you walk in, the walls, the floor that you walk upon, the grass that you tread upon, the roads you take, everywhere there are trillions, zillions, quadrillions of such microorganisms. And that struggle is always there. But as you can see, there isn't any particular struggle. But if the same principle, if it is taken in otherwise light, in, you can say, in lives of primates, especially the Homo sapiens, then it means that there is a constant struggle between different members of Homo sapiens for power, for social, or for power and resources of all kind. But such struggle, I'm sorry, my daughter has woken up, and I have forgot where I was. So this struggle for power and resources, it is actually not there. It is only an assume, and you can say it's a hypothetical situation. First, there is no struggle between strong and weak at biological level, because biologically all of us are similar. Biologically, all the processes are similar. The inherited DNA is similar. The cellular and subcellular processes are similar. The tissue formation, the cellular actions, and the immunity, all such processes, which could be clubbed as biological processes. So biologically we are similar, internally and externally. Then the strong and weak element is not there. Then if it is about physical constitution, if somebody is physically weak, then uh, this weakness, it cannot be equated with the biological intemperance or uh, socially unworthiness. So my point is, biological principles say they could not be equated with social and political principles. But since those principles at different time were used were misused by such fascist leaders, they did have the negative consequences. And such negative consequences, one of which Hitler told his German officer cadets in 1944, victory is to the strong and weak must go to the hell, go to the wall. As I've said, there is biological equality between all members of this species, and what biological principle of natural selection and population genetics uh, they highlight is a different course. They talk about different time scale and different biological actions. Then Hitler described the Second World War as an unalterable law of whole life, and fascism is perhaps unique among political ideology in regarding war as good in itself, and this view reflected in Mussolini's belief war is to man was maternity is to women. So all of their ideas, they infuse biological theories, biological principle with rigor of social and political principle. And such cocktails are not healthy at all. Okay. Anyway, we are talking about fascism. Then Darwinian thought also invested fascism with a distinctive set of political values which equate goodness with strength and evil with weakness. So here, Darwinian thought about natural selection, in which it says natural selection, it prefers good traits, and those good traits, first, it is about the traits at species level. Second, the most of the species, when I said they are biologically similar, so it's not about the traits of individual. It is about population traits, such as if the geography is a tropical country, so the atmosphere, the environment, the climate, they will also be of tropical nature. High humidity, high heat, high rainfall, and in such an area, dark skin complexion is preferred rather than any other kind of skin complexion. So here dark skin complexion, a preference for tropical areas, it happens at a very long scale and at species level. Uh, People, the dark people, even if they settle from tropical to subtropical, or you can say the higher mountain areas, their skin tone is not going to get light in 1 year, 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade, or 1 century. It is going to take thousands of years. And in the same way, even if the white people of subtropical and tundra climate, even if they are coming down to live among the tropic level, they're going to take thousands of years for their skin tone to change from white to the dark. So again, these principles they were not clearly enunciated at that time, and Darwin, so Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer, all the biologists and geneticists of that time, they could not be blamed either because they also had a certain limitation of their knowledge at that time. It is only now that with the multiple revelations in molecular genetics, we have come to get the get some clear idea about how genetics and inheritance works. So उस time में they could not have known all these basic things. हाँ उन्होंने they clearly provided a template for us to to work upon, to make further research and development. But उस time पे उनके the unclear ideas they were exploited. They got a different take and enter into the political arena. And this entrance it equated goodness with strength and evil with weakness. Then fascists respect a very different set of martial values, such as loyalty, duty, obedience, self-sacrifice. Or when you see this in comparison with different other political ideologies, such as Marxism, Gandhism, nationalism, you will find these fascists, they really are walking on a different course, a different track. Then according to them, the victory of strong is glorified, power and strength are worshipped, weakness is despised, and elimination of weak is positively welcomed. Such were their ideas, and this this idea, this elimination of weak element, it also got a different turn here when these fascist leaders they started eugenics, a program of eugenics especially introduced by the Nazis in Germany, whereby mentally and physically handicapped people were forcibly sterilized, and then between 1939 and 41, they were systematically murdered, which is known as Holocaust. This attempt by the Nazis to exterminate European Jewry from 1941 onwards was known as racial eugenics. So eugenics in short, it is the artificial selection of better traits. And most of the plant breeder, the animal breeders, they employ this technique. So it's as simple as mating a cow with a strong bull. And this is no brainer. Everyone want their cow to provide good quality milk and provide milk in greater quantity. And for that, mating with a strong bull will be will result in better traits and will result in a better progeny, better offspring. And this mechanism, this mating of this artificial mating, is known as eugenics. And in the same case, if some species, some members of a particular species, if they have diseased, if they are not fertile enough, if they are sterile, if there is something to them for which they need to be culled, they need to be eliminated, then the killing is done in a proper scientific manner. So both this artificial selection and culling, they have taken the term eugenics. So which is, in short, the same natural selection but on the artificial line, which is done by human uh, for for whatever purpose. In case of cow, for better milk. In case of many cattle and domesticated animals, for you can say better products. In case of many sources of animal protein, such as pigs, they are artificially fattened so that they provide good quality and meat in more quantity. So, such processes, eugenics, they they were before the arrival of these fascist tendencies. They were limited to laboratory experiments, and to various plant breeding and animal breeding activities. But this eugenics, it got a different hype during the Nazi Party when they really taken the Darwinian thought by heart and tried to eliminate the purported weak. So weak, according to them, were all those people who were not fit enough to survive. But as I've said, The physical characteristic and the biological makeup both are different. A physically handicapped person can have healthy child. A mentally weak person can have a healthy child. So here, this distinction, this was not highlighted and this was not counteracted by the then biologists of that time. And the same principle of eugenics, it was clearly exploited by Nazi Germany, and it resulted in the death of 6 million Jews, along with many other, you can say, racially, racially and physically weak people. So many handicapped people, many sterile people, many gypsies, those people who did not meet the iron criteria of Nazi Germany, all of them they met a gruesome death. So this is the whole about racial eugenics. And finally, the fascist conception of life as an unending struggle, it gave it a restless and expansionist character. So their unending struggle, it bound to had some skirmishes, some conflict, because they needed something to go beyond to. So their national quality, which they believed they could only be cultivated through conflict and demonstrated by conquest and victory. So, for example, Hitler's foreign policy, it took the form of Lebensraum, living space in the East. So by which he meant the people of his time, people of his country, they needed much more space, and this living space, it could only be provided by struggle, by conquest, by expansion. So once in power in 1933, Hitler embarked on a program of rearmament in preparation for expansion in late 1930s on an expansionist line, by which Austria was annexed in 1938. Czechoslovakia was dismembered in 1939. Poland was invaded in September 1939, and in 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, that is invasion of Soviet Union. So the same, this is skewed, or you can say the perverted explanation, perverted interpretation of Darwinism, it took a different form. First, in terms of racial eugenics, and second, in terms of the expansionist tendency, which ultimately led to the Second World War. Then we will proceed to leadership and elitism in the next lecture. This is it. Thank you very much.